Germany has announced another assistance package for Ukraine, pledging 400 million euros in weapons and aid. It includes ammunition, armoured vehicles, mine-clearing systems and supplies for fighting through winter. Meanwhile, representatives of more than 50 countries are gathering at the US airbase at Ramstein in southern Germany. It's the fifth time the Western allies have met to discuss their support for Kyiv in its defence against Russia's invasion. Ukraine is expected to make another appeal for the delivery of long-range weapons, including cruise missiles from Germany. Our chief political correspondent Nina Haase is covering that meeting for us at the airbase in Ramstein. Tell us more about what's on the agenda at today's meeting.
Well, this meeting is hosted by US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and it brings together defense ministers from some 50 countries, so NATO countries, but also other countries that are supporters of Ukraine. And ministers here will first get an overview of what Ukraine says are its most vital, most urgent needs to fight on the ground in Ukraine and in the Russian-occupied territories, but also in terms of what they need in terms of longer-term support. So ammunition is, of course, still a big priority, but Ukraine has also said that it needs those long-range weapons so that it can cut off supply routes by Russia in Russian-occupied territories. The US, we're hearing, is exploring shipping the ATACMS cruise missiles, and Kyiv also says that it wants Germany to send the Taurus cruise missiles. Now, they are a very modern weapon system. They can travel up to 500 kilometers, but Berlin has always said so far that it only wants to go together with Washington when it comes to those weapons deliveries. So lots of discussion expected here today, and it's also an opportunity for people to get to know each other. There are a couple of new faces here today. Ukraine has a new defense minister, as do the UK and Canada, for example.
Before the meeting, Germany unveiled a new aid package for Ukraine. Tell us more about that.
That package is worth some 400 million euros, and it includes ammunition. It also includes mine-clearing systems and armoured vehicles, and it includes support for Ukraine to get through this winter. Now, as far as the Taurus is concerned, that is a high priority for Kyiv, of course, but Berlin, again, is concerned that it might get drawn into the war if those weapons were used to attack targets on the ground in Russia itself. Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister, has said that the decision will be taken in a week or 2 weeks' time, but ultimately that decision lies with the German Chancellor.
Nina Haase for us, our chief political correspondent at Ramstein Airbase. Thank you very much. Well, Germany has already delivered some of its Leopard tanks to help Kyiv fight off Russia's invasion. At least 10 are on the ground, with up to 100 to be sent by several other countries. DW's Max Zander has been to southern Ukraine to see how they're making a difference on the front lines.
A Leopard prepares for the hunt. The tanks were expected to be decisive for Ukraine's counteroffensive, which has been going on around the clock for more than 3 months now.
A leopard is a predator. Since we work at night, it's a nocturnal predator.
Artem is the tank's driver and mechanic. Mobilized a year ago, he began his war in a Soviet-era tank. The Leopard, he says, has many advantages.
The tank is fast. I know that in extreme situations, I can get the job done quickly. If you need to rapidly approach or leave in a hurry, you have a speed advantage in this tank compared to the Soviet ones. If we're fired upon or we are informed about a possible attack, we can move quickly in the tank. This is a big advantage, and it increases safety.
They're not only fast, reaching speeds of more than 70 kilometers per hour. The Leopards are kitted out with night vision devices and optics far superior to those of the enemy. Commander Ihor tells us his company's Leopards have destroyed far more enemy tanks than they could with what they had before. But the Russians have adapted.
In the beginning of the offensive, the Russians responded with their tanks. They stopped that after the Leopards destroyed almost all of them. They couldn't offer much resistance with their heavy equipment. They're afraid of the Leopards. Now the Russians fight the Leopards in other ways.
Now they use drones. The Russian Defense Ministry claims this footage from earlier this summer shows an attack on a Ukrainian tank with the Lancet drone. The Ukrainians say the Leopards here have proven themselves on the battlefields. They're faster, they can shoot at greater distances, and they're much safer than the Soviet-made tanks the crews had up until now. But they also seem to create problems, especially when it comes to maintenance and repairs. Artem and his team are able to do some maintenance on site. He says they often need to work on the tracks.
Most often we have to replace the rubber because it wears out very quickly. Rollers also have to be replaced frequently and new ones ordered. The undercarriage is what needs to be replaced most often.
Maintenance is one thing. Repairing damage is a bigger issue. The Leopard has lighter armor than the Soviet battle tanks. The vast minefields laid by the Russians are slowing the counteroffensive. These men have experienced it firsthand.
In one tank we were blown up by a mine and our crew suffered concussions. But we were treated in hospital and we had that tank repaired.
More serious damage has to be dealt with in facilities outside of Ukraine, and this can take the tank out of action for months. The counteroffensive is tough for the men of the 47th Brigade and their tanks, even the Leopards. Today, they can rest and refuel. Soon they'll be back in the operation zone, spending nights hunting the enemy.